Hello friends, it's Christy Marcotte. Today I'm sharing the cards I made using Paper Rose's Grunge Textures paper collection. I recently used their industrial paper collection and it was so much fun. So I thought I would try the Grunge Textures. The designs are fairly similar and there's lots of pink. That always makes me happy. There are 24 sheets of double-sided papers, 2 of each design, and these are A5 size. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, so 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. And you can easily get 2 card backgrounds from 1 sheet of paper. So I will be making multiple cards. I'm only going to show the process of assembling 1 of each design. So let's go ahead and get started with card design number 1. I will be using card sketches on some of the cards. This sketch is from MFT, it's number 373. And I do share all of the card sketches, including measurements, over on my coordinating blog post. That link is provided in the description box, or you can simply head over to christymarcotte.com. For this first card, I'm using this fun blue and brown distressed background. I'm adding thin strips of this polka dot paper, and I only cut out those thin pieces since you're not going to see most of it. I did fill in that gap between the polka dot paper just so everything is nice and level. I'm layering everything on some dark brown cardstock. I'll put my card front onto a card base, leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. And most of my cardstock matted layers are an additional 1/8 of an inch to the measurements listed on the sketches. Instead of using the circle that's indicated on the sketch, I'm using this beautiful heart die from Paper Rose. And I decided to keep all those flourish pieces part of the die cut, so I didn't remove them. I put liquid adhesive on the back, and then I have my acrylic block sitting on top so the glue can dry, since I used some pearlescent cardstock for that heart. The sentiment is from the Maker's stamp set. This is, I made this just for you. Before I adhere that sentiment strip, I did put a scrap piece of cardstock on the right hand side just to keep it level with that heart. And then I'll glue it to the card using some liquid adhesive. I cut out one of the bows from Paper Rose's Tiny Bows die set. I'm just gonna glue the little tie to the center of that bow. And then I'll attach it to the top center of the heart. I think it adds a nice extra detail. And then to finish off the card, I'm using the clear crystal shaker mix from Paper Rose. I'll put a few of them around the sentiment and then 2 in the upper left-hand corner. I'm using my embellishment wand to help pick up those crystals. I'll put a drop of glue on the card and then attach the crystals. I love this clear crystal mix and I use it all the time since it matches all the paper collections. And there is my finished card. I was able to make 4 using this card sketch. The other 2 look slightly different since I used the other end of that A5 pattern paper. Now moving on to card design number 2. I'm not going to use a card sketch this time, and this is my favorite pattern paper in the whole collection. It has a wood grain background with some pink paint that's peeling at the edges. Even though the paper is completely smooth, it has some amazing looking texture. So I didn't want to cover very much of that pattern paper. I layered it on some black cardstock, and then I'm using Paper Rose's beautiful stamp set and also the coordinating die. I cut out the word beautiful from some pink pearlescent cardstock, layered that on some black cardstock, and then I popped it up using some thin foam squares. I used the stamp set to complete the sentiment. So the full sentiment will be, "You are beautiful just the way you are." I glued down the stamped portion of the sentiment directly onto the card, so just the word beautiful will be popped up. Then to finish off the card, I'm going to add 2 banners in the upper left-hand corner. This is from Paper Rose's Banners 1 die set. It's a longer banner. I just trimmed it down to about 1 inch. I glued the pink banner down first, added a small scrap of cardstock to the right of that pink banner, and then added the black banner, just trying to keep everything level. Then I'll finish off the card with some more of the clear crystals. I'll put 2 of them on the banners and then a few around the sentiment in the lower right-hand corner. I kept the card design very simple, but it really didn't need anything more. I absolutely love this pattern paper. So I was able to make a total of 4 cards. The other 2 also look different just because of the other end of that pattern paper. This is definitely my favorite card, but do let me know which card is your favorite. Now moving on to card design number 3, I'm going to bring in a card sketch again. This is from Mojo Monday. It's number 554. I'm using some pattern paper that looks like maybe concrete for the background, and then I'm adding this rectangle piece of pearlescent pink cardstock. I'll layer all of this on some black cardstock. And for this card, that black matted layer is an additional 1/4 of an inch instead of the 1/8 of an inch that I generally use. I used a stitch square die to cut out 3 squares from the pink diamond grate pattern paper. Before I adhere them to the card, I did add those scrap pieces of cardstock on the very ends where it goes off of the pink cardstock. Using liquid adhesive to adhere everything in place since it is going on top of that pearlescent finish. I find the liquid adhesive helps it all stay in place versus the ATG tape. Then I cut out a stitched circle die cut from some white shimmer cardstock. And I also have a scallop circle die cut from some black cardstock. Layer those together and then I'll adhere it to the right lower corner as indicated on the sketch since I am following it fairly closely. For the image on the card, I'm adding this Scribble Heart die cut from Paper Rose. This is the same pink pearlescent cardstock. I'm using the opposite side though, so it has a darker pink color. I put liquid adhesive on the back and then held it in place with my acrylic block. I cut out the word hello from some black glitter cardstock. I'll put some liquid adhesive on the back and attach it to the lower area of the heart. And I will have links provided in the description box for all of the products I use in this video. To finish off the card, I'm using some black gems that I have on hand. I love this small size. Put 2 of them in the lower right-hand corner and 3 in the upper left-hand corner. And there is my card all finished. I was able to make 4 cards using this sketch. Now moving on to card design number 4, and I won't be using a card sketch. I have this fun distress looking background with the soft browns and blues, and I'm going to layer that on some brown cardstock. I did cut out that background panel using a stitched rectangle die just for some extra detail. I'll add this panel onto my card base. And for this card, I also have the wider layers. I'm putting a strip of brown cardstock across the back just to anchor my sentiment. I cut out these 2 die cuts from Paper Rose's Nesting Label 1 die set. I have one with some white cardstock and I'm going to stamp the word paper. So the full sentiment is paper hugs, but I decided to mask off the word hugs so I could just stamp the word paper. And I used my mini MISTI just to make sure I got a solid impression. The other die cut piece is from some satin blue mirror cardstock. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and I'm layering them together, shifting them off to the right, so you're only going to see that specialty paper on the left-hand side, just for a little extra detail. And then using that same specialty cardstock, I cut out the word hugs. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and then I'll adhere it to my card. Then to finish off the card, I'm adding some small brown gems to the upper left-hand corner, and then I'll put 3 to the right on this brown strip. Trying to get them nice and straight. So there is my finished card. I made a total of 4 using this pattern paper, and then I made another 4 using this fun burgundy and black pattern paper. Lots of fairly simple designs, but with such beautiful pattern paper, it really doesn't need anything more. Now moving on to card design number 5, I'm using a card sketch from MFT. This is number 506. For the background paper, I'm using some pattern paper that looks like concrete or cement. For the smaller rectangle piece, I have this fun corrugated metal paper in a reddish pink color. I'm going to layer all of that on some black cardstock. Put this card front onto a card base, leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. For this sentiment on the card, I'm using a sentiment cut apart from Paper Rose's black and white sentiment sheets. I'm going to cut a small fishtail on both ends, and then I'll layer it on this black cardstock box. I'll use some liquid adhesive to adhere that to the center. Trying to get it nice and centered at least. And then I'll put some small pieces of cardstock on the outside edges where it goes over all the other layers, and then attach it to the card. For those 3 circle elements on the sketch, I'm going to use some of the gears from Paper Rose's Cogs die set. And I cut these out of some red, kind of a reddish pink iridescent cardstock from Tonic Studios. It's so pretty. Using a liquid adhesive to adhere them in place. Since it is specialty cardstock, I do have to press them down just a little bit longer, but once they're glued down, they're not going to move. So there is my finished card, another fairly simple design, but that iridescent cardstock really adds a lovely shine to the card. Now moving on to card design number 6. This sketch is from MFT. This is number 330. I used a stitched rectangle die to cut out the background paper. I'm going to layer that on this scalloped rectangle die cut from some brown cardstock. I put some ATG on the back and also a little bit of liquid adhesive. I find that using the stitched die sometimes warps the edge of the paper slightly. So adding a little bit of liquid adhesive just makes sure it all stays down. I used some of the polka dot pattern paper for the strip that goes across the card and layered that on some more of this dark brown cardstock. For the circle, I have this soft blue cardstock. I'll layer that on some dark brown cardstock. And then I'm adding 2 pieces of scrap cardstock to the upper portion of this circle die cut before adhering it in place, just so there's not that bump in the center of that circle. For the image, I'm using one of the grass bush dies from Paper Rose. I cut it out of some gold satin mirror cardstock. Just adhere it in place using some liquid adhesive. I've already stamped out the sentiment, "Thank you for your kindness." This is from Paper Rose's Daisy Days stamp set. And I just adhere that to the lower left-hand corner. Then to finish up the card, I'm going to bring out those clear crystals again. I'll put 2 of them in the lower left-hand corner, put 2 in the upper right-hand corner, and then a few around the image. Trying to pick out different sizes, since there's at least 4 different sizes in this mix, which is really fun. Even though there's a lot of pink in this paper collection, there's still some papers that have a hint of blue. So you really get that nice mix of the blues or pinks with the browns. So I think this paper collection would work great for masculine or feminine cards. And I was able to make 4 using that card sketch. Now moving on to card design number 7. The card sketch is from MFT. This is number 203. I'm using some corrugated metal pattern paper for the background, and then I have this soft blue cardstock that matches nicely with the pattern paper for that larger banner. Bringing in some more of that polka dot pattern paper. I was able to stretch that pattern paper, I think, for 4 different card designs, which was really nice. I did round the bottom 2 corners, and then I'll layer this piece on some black cardstock. and then put the card front onto a card base, leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. I'll add this banner to the right, again following this sketch fairly closely. For this sentiment on the card, I'm using another cut apart. This is from Paper Rose's Big Black and White Sentiment Pack. I love these sentiment packs. They come with a ton of different sentiments. So if you really don't want to do some stamping, these are really handy to have. I think I have at least 4 or 5 of their sentiment packs. Instead of adding the star, I decided to add a few hearts. I'm using this soft blue mirror cardstock. Put 2 hearts to the right and then 1 smaller heart underneath the sentiment. I was able to make a total of 8 cards using this card sketch. I just used some different papers for the other 4 cards. So now I have 4 cards in blue and 4 in pink using that same design. Now moving on to card design number 8. At this point, I only have 1 full sheet of pattern paper, and it's this diamond plate pink pattern paper. I'm going to layer that on some black cardstock, and of course I didn't get it straight at first, so I had to pull it up. I'm going to put this on my card base, leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white showing. And then I have a strip of this dark pink cardstock. I'm just going to glue it to the lower portion of the card. I have a stitched rectangle die cut in white cardstock, and I'll use my Mini Missy to stamp out the sentiment, "How are you?" I only needed to ink it up once, so that was nice. And at this point I forgot I wanted to add some Distress Oxide ink to the edges of the white cardstock. I should have done that before adding the sentiment, but it still worked out fine. I'm using the black soot color since I didn't want this white cardstock being super white. So now it has more of a distressed look to it. I'll layer that sentiment box on some pink cardstock and then again on some black cardstock. When I used the industrial paper collection, I made a couple cards using this same design, so I thought it'd be fun to do it again. Before adhering that sentiment box, I will add a small scrap piece of cardstock to the upper area and then adhere it to the card using some liquid adhesive. Then to complete the sentiment, I'll add the word hello, and I cut this out of some black mirror cardstock, so it has some really pretty shine. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and then adhere it above the "How are you" sentiment. Then to finish off the card, I'll add a couple small banners in the upper left-hand corner. I like to use 2 different colors. I think it adds a nice detail. So I have the pink down first, and then I'll put the black banner on top. And there is the finished card. I was only able to make 2 since I'm almost out of pattern paper at this point. In fact, at this point in the video, here are all the pattern paper scraps I have left over. It's really not much, and there's only 3 different pattern designs. So for my final card design number 9, I'm using Paper Rose's Card Creator 3 die. So it's this fun background die where you can add all these little squares. And you'll be able to add 12 different squares. I cut out the frame from some black cardstock, and I'm adding some double-sided tape on the back side. Then I'll flip this panel over and inlay all those die-cut pattern paper pieces. The openings aren't exactly the same size, but they're fairly close. I just wanted to make sure I had them the correct direction. When I cut them out, I do keep track of which piece went in which opening. This is such a fun die to finish off all the pattern paper because you could combine 12 different pattern papers. You could do just 1 different pattern paper. You could even cut out the frame and attach it to pattern paper or maybe a watercolor background. So many different options. So now I'll remove the release paper. Before adhering this panel onto a white card base, I'm going to put a piece of black cardstock behind. This will hide any little gaps between those squares. This die is not A2 size. It's a bit smaller and it's definitely not as wide. I decided to add another layer of black cardstock. Ran out of tape, so I needed to refill that real quick. And then I'll add this onto the white card base, which I also trimmed down. So it is 5.5 inches tall, but it's only 4 inches wide. I'm using another sentiment cut apart. This is the word thanks. I've already layered it on some pink and some black cardstock. Then I put liquid adhesive on the back and glued it to the center of the card. For some embellishments, I'm using some more of the gears in that fun pinkish red iridescent cardstock. I'll glue 3 of them to the lower right-hand corner and then 2 in the upper left-hand corner. I love using specialty cardstock on my cards. It adds a lovely sparkle or shine depending on what type of cardstock you use. I'm putting a liquid adhesive on the back of all the gears. I do have to hold them down just a few seconds longer just to make sure they'll adhere. And I decided it didn't need any other embellishments. I think that was enough. So there is my finished card. I was only able to make one with the leftover scraps I had. So now here is everything that is left over, just 4 small paper scraps. And I may have been able to make one more card, but I decided I was finished at this point. And I didn't show it in the video this time, but I also added those thin strips of pattern paper to the inside of the cards. You may have noticed from the photographs of my cards throughout the video. In addition to the paper collection, I also used 11 sheets of 8.5 by 11 and 6 sheets of 12 by 12 solid colored cardstock. I made a total of 39 cards using Paper Rose's Grunge Textures paper collection. This was such a fun paper collection, especially for all that pink. Again, not my usual paper style, but it's so fun to try different things. I will have links provided in the description box where you can purchase the paper collection and all the products I used in this video. Paper Rose is located in Australia and they do ship internationally, but you can also purchase their products in the US. I will have links to both locations in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.